Hey guys, what's up? It's Raven. Fun fact from mindset.strong85 on Instagram. Your forearm, the measurement between the crease of your elbow to the crease of your wrist, is usually the same exact size as your foot. On another note, today I am back to actually talk about parenting. I said in my other episode that I was going to talk about parenting, but I ended up more so just telling my pregnancy story, my labor and delivery. I also talked about kids and social media content. I was kind of rambling, got off track, and I didn't end up actually talking about actual parenting as far as like rules and schedules and do's and don'ts and things that I've learned. Like I never really got to that part of the episode, and I said I was going to do another one, and this is that episode. So I asked you guys on the Raven Elyse podcast Instagram to leave me some questions that I could answer, and I have compiled a list of 20 questions. So let's play 20 questions, shall we? Jumping right into the first question. Do I make my child do sports or extracurriculars? Short answer, no. Long answer, Zaya has officially started her first extracurricular program just recently. She just started in January, and it is a robotics after school class, and it's like Lego robotics. So she's in a small group. She's the only girl, and they are learning about robotics through Legos. And it was just like a flyer that came home from school with her one day, and I showed it to her. I asked her if she was interested. She said yes. We play with Legos at home. We visited the Legoland Discovery Center recently. I thought it might be something she might be interested in just for that reason, and she said yeah. So that just so happened to be her first thing that she's now signed up for. But up until now, like, obviously, no, there's not been any like sports or any other things that I've forced her to do. She's only 8 years old, which in my mind is young as far as like sports and extracurriculars, but I don't come from a super sporty family. I know some people, they like to get their kids involved in sports from an extremely young age. And I know that that's normal for a lot of families, but my parents didn't really do that with me and my siblings, and I definitely did not grow up to be a sporty person. My parents, when I got older, definitely like encouraged me to try some sports. I briefly did volleyball and I briefly tried cheer, but I hated it. I've never been an athletic person. I've never enjoyed any part of that. So, I mean, it's just not really in my blood. Sports are not in my blood. So it's just not something that I'm like jumping to get my daughter involved in either, I think. But of course, like she is her own person. And if she wanted to do sports or showed any interest in it, of course I would nurture that. And even though I'm not into it, that doesn't mean that I wouldn't, support her in it. But she just hasn't expressed it. Like it just sort of hasn't come up, I guess. Like I've asked her, like there's been a few different things that have come up that I've asked her, like, oh, what about dance? What about gymnastics? What about this? What about that? And she just hasn't shown any interest in it so far. So I don't know. We're kind of taking it slow right now, waiting to see what she's genuinely interested in. I definitely do not believe in just like forcing your kid to do random things just because I had the experience of like, my parents trying to get me into stuff that I really, really disliked. And that was it's not fun to be forced to do something that you're not good at and you don't like. And I mean, like literally, I understand. Of course, I understand the point of wanting your kids to be involved in something, but I think it's super important to find something that they actually enjoy. There are so many options in this world of extracurricular things to do. I think it's super important to find something that your child actually enjoys and is good at, no matter what it is, no matter if it's your thing or not, something that you are personally interested in as a parent. It doesn't matter. It's for them. You know what I mean? So I hope to find more stuff like that Zaya can get into. She's super creative. I feel like she kind of takes after me in that sense. I've always been a very sort of like artsy, just artsy, fartsy, crafty type of girl. And I feel like Zaya is definitely following in my footsteps. She loves to draw, paint, create things of all kinds. So I know I definitely need to find more activities that suit her. But yeah, we're working on it. Long story short. Okay, so I started off with that pretty easy question. Now moving on to a question that's a little bit more serious. In my other episode, I told the story of how my pregnancy went and how I am not co-parenting with her dad and different things like that. And of course, people have a lot of questions surrounding that. And one of the questions that I got was, what about her dad's side of the family? You know, what about her paternal grandparents, her cousins, aunts and uncles on that side? Like, does she not have a relationship with them? Like, what did they say? What is up with that? And what I can tell you is it's just a non-factor. That's I don't want to speak for anybody. I don't want to put any words in anybody's mouth. But what I can say is no, they are not involved. No, we do not have a relationship with them. It's just not a thing. It's really never been a thing. And yeah, that's pretty much all I can say on that. So no, she does not have a relationship with anybody on that side. I also got another question on that episode because I mentioned my emetophobia or fear of vomit. And somebody asked me, how did I overcome that phobia? And I will say that I did not ever completely overcome it. I do still have a little tinge of that phobia. I do still just really not enjoy vomit. I mean, who does? Nobody likes throwing up. Nobody likes the idea of being sick or seeing somebody else be sick. I mean, it's just all gross and nasty and uncomfortable, period. Of course, nobody likes it, but I would say I still would put myself in the category of somebody who kind of still has a phobia. Like, of course, nobody likes it, but I really, really don't like it. And I do try to avoid it at all costs, but I definitely don't have as bad of a phobia as I used to have because I became a mom. And I became a mom to a little girl who, especially when she was younger, would just seem to be easily nauseous. You know what I mean? Whether it's getting car sick in the backseat in her car seat, or whether it's just, I don't know. Like, I felt like it was just exposure therapy. That's all I can say. Exposure therapy, because when you're a mom, you don't have a choice. And when you're a single mom, you have even less of a choice. When your kid is sick, when your kid is vomiting, who can you pass your kid off to deal with it for you? No one. It'd be me and her. I have to deal with it. I have to clean it up. I have to help her. I have to witness it. I have to see it. I have to smell it. I have to, you know what I mean? So like I quickly was thrown into some pretty severe exposure therapy, and I quickly had to learn how to at least somewhat deal with it, because we weren't going to survive if I couldn't deal with it. You know what I mean? And that's just one of those things that like you're almost like survival instincts, motherly instincts kick in. You know what I mean? Like I had a sort of a similar, this is off topic, but I kind of experienced a similar thing with my driving anxiety. I've mentioned before how I used to have really bad driving anxiety. I didn't get my license until I was 21 years old, and I was really scared to drive. But part of what got me out of that is becoming a mom, because again, I don't have much of a choice. There are a lot of situations where like I really need to be able to drive. I need to drive us to the doctor. I need to, you know what I mean? So you kind of just have to really push yourself to get over certain phobias and fears. Of course, it's easier said than done, and I know it doesn't work that way, you know, so simply for everyone, but that's kind of how it worked for me. Okay, the next question I got was, what are your thoughts on buying name brand item for kids? More specifically, shoes. You mentioned how fast your daughter goes through shoes. Do you think it would happen as often if maybe she had New Balances, Nike versus Walmart or Target brands? Now, I sense a tiny bit of shade in this question. It feels like a little bit of judgment. Like, why do I buy my daughter, they said Walmart or Target brand, like off-brand shoes? You don't see Zaya wearing the newest, like she said, New Balances. True, she has. Okay, let's back up. I have definitely purchased my daughter a lot of name brand shoes, clothes, you name it. I'm not anti-name brand. I am not a super duper 100% cheapskate in that sense. Ever since Zaya's been a baby, she has definitely had name brand stuff. And even to this day, you will see certain things here and there that I get for her. But particularly right now, like recently, I definitely have not been getting as much name brand stuff because she goes through it so fast. It is such a waste. And when I say she goes through it, it's for two reasons. Number one, she is so rough on her clothes and shoes. I mentioned in one of my recent vlogs, it seems like when she's going off to school, she must be going off to war because she comes back with holes and stains and rips, and even like her shoes are like falling apart and just getting so dirty and so just like scuffed up immediately. Like one day of wearing the shoes to school, like after day one, they come back just scuffed, dirt. Like it looks like she just like, I don't even know. So there's the wear and tear, but also she right now especially is growing so fast. Like y'all have seen it. If y'all watch my vlogs, people have even been commenting, like you can even tell on camera, she's getting so tall, she's growing so fast. So if I were to buy her these expensive name brand shoes, not only would she go to school and dirty them up and scuff them up immediately, but she also would not be able to fit them 3 weeks later. So what is the point? That would be like so wasteful because we would barely get any use out of them. So that really is the reason why I tend to go for more affordable options right now, because it just seems kind of wasteful at this point. But again, that doesn't mean that she's not allowed to have them, or if she sees a pair that she really likes, like of course I'll get them for her. But another thing too, and I had this issue with different things. People think sometimes that I'm like not allowing Zaya to have stuff, but they don't realize that it is her preference. I give Zaya a lot of choice when it comes to, you know, what she wears and stuff like that. I let her choose. We go around all the stores and I let her point out what she likes, and I've learned what she likes. She's very picky about the way things look and feel, and she only likes certain things, and a lot of like name brand items don't fit her preferences. So it's her choice at the end of the day too. Next question: how are you balancing new school approaches with old school techniques? I'm trying to break generational trauma, but sometimes I feel myself wanting to bring back some of that trauma to let them know that I'm not that mama. I have 3 girls and they try me every day. Balancing new school with old school, breaking generational trauma. I don't know. I don't really feel like this is a huge issue for me because I feel like I had a very healthy childhood. I feel like my parents, while, you know, nobody is a perfect parent, and there might be certain things that I do differently than how my parents raised me, I think my parents were definitely more on the healthier side, definitely more on the gentler side, definitely not, you know, traumatizing me. Like I guess what I'm getting at is I don't feel like I have a lot of generational trauma to learn from or try to break generational curses or anything like that. Like, I think for the most part, my parents set a good example, and they didn't use a lot of toxic old school techniques, such as whoopings, for example. I didn't get whooped as a child, at least not by my parents. Now, my grandma is a different story, but you know, I just don't really feel like I'm thinking about it from that perspective, which I know is just like a personal privilege of mine. Then the next question is, when and how do I decide who gets to meet Zaya when it comes to dating, especially since I don't co-parent? Did she meet the last guy and did she like him? This is a tricky question, and I think it all depends. I think it's a case-by-case basis. I don't think that there's any like time frame that I can just put on it to say like, oh, you have to be dating the guy for 6 months before you should introduce him to your kids. Like, I don't think there's one solid time frame you can put on it. I think it has a lot to do with just your dating experience and kind of how it goes. It's going to be different if maybe the guy you're dating has kids versus doesn't have kids. Maybe y'all want to get the kids together sooner. Maybe, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I feel like there's different variables. Now, in my case, with the last guy I dated, number one, it was a long distance relationship. He was out of state. So because of that, there was, you know, fewer opportunities for me to even see him, let alone Zaya. So that definitely like sort of switched up the situation. He also did not have kids, so the whole thing about like wanting to get the kids together, that wasn't a factor. But yes, to answer the question, Zaya did meet him, and it ended up being sort of on accident because he was visiting me. I didn't really plan for him to necessarily meet Zaya. That wasn't like the plan or the intention, but he ended up staying, like extending his stay unexpectedly needed to extend his stay. Say that 5 times fast. And so it just scheduling wise, it was like, oh, my parents were going to watch Zaya for this amount of time, but then he ended up staying for this amount of time. So now Zaya is coming home. And so they're both going to be here. And like, well, kind of just is what it is. And I wasn't really freaking out about it at the time, even though it was unplanned. I was like, you know what? This is fine. Like, I've known him long enough. I trust him. I'm trying to think exactly like what the time frame was, like how long we had been seeing each other before that happened. I want to say, wait, let me not lie. It was about 6 weeks. So pretty soon into it, because this was one of the first visits that he and I had together. So on one hand, I was like, thinking kind of like, yikes, like I wasn't trying to do this right now. It just sort of, like I said, due to the scheduling, it just happened. But on the other hand, I was like, well, it's not that big of a deal because I did not introduce him as this is mommy's boyfriend and blah, 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 blah. Like we're only 6 weeks in. Yes, I'm dating this person. Yes, I like this person. Yes, I trust this person. Like it's fine. It's fine enough for me to trust you around my child, especially like it's not like it's unsupervised or anything. Like I'm right here. But I also wasn't going to make a big deal. Like this is like, it just was like, this is blank, said his name and just, kept it extremely casual. Like, you know what I mean? Like basically as if I was introducing any other regular friend, which is very normal for Zaya. I'm somebody who likes to host and entertain and have people over and, have a lot of different friends, guy friends included. So Zaya is used to, me having people over or having a guy friend over and introducing this is blah, blah, blah. And it's really not a big deal. So to her, it sort of just like blended right into that and it didn't have to be a big deal. However, I think it's different if you are trying to make it a point to say like, this is my boyfriend, blah, 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 but I didn't do that. Next question. In what ways is your parenting style different and or the same to how your parents parented you? So this is kind of going back to what I said earlier. Luckily, I feel like my parents did a good job and I can really look to them for a lot of positive inspiration and tips and tricks. And I do go to my parents a lot for advice and like I trust them in that sense. And I feel like they know what they're talking about. Mostly when it comes to parenting, right? They've obviously been parenting a lot longer than I have. But some of the key differences, I would say, I've told you guys how I do feel like my parents were kind of helicopter parents. They were more on the strict side in terms of like surveillance, like keeping an eye on, keeping us more, or just let me speak for myself, keeping me more sheltered and, just wanting more of a hold, more of a grasp to really make sure and try to protect in that sense. And so there were certain things that we weren't allowed to do or certain things that we didn't have a lot of independence in because they really just had a strong hold, you know what I mean? Like just a helicopter parent. That's the best way I can describe it. And I remember once I became a teenager and especially once I, got to be college age, I realized that I did not have certain experiences under my belt because of that. I hadn't learned certain things. I didn't know about certain things. I didn't know how to do certain things. I felt sort of, as the kids would say, green. I came to college very green, like just not knowing, just out the loop, just not hip, and even certain things like I barely knew how to do my own laundry, if I'm being real, because my parents also just like, I don't want to say they babied me, but they sort of babied me in certain ways. You know what I mean? Like I was definitely sort of a daddy's girl in certain ways. Like they would do certain things for me and I never really fully learned how to do certain things. I don't know. Saying all this to say, that's probably the biggest difference between them and myself, because I really, really value instilling independence in Zaya. That is one of the most important things to me, is making sure that she is independent, self-sufficient, knows how to do things herself. I love the whole Montessori style of everything, where it's like, give them their own little stuff on their level, let them do it themselves, let them learn how to do stuff from a young age. Don't baby them, don't act like they can't do anything for themselves. Of course, yes, it's nice to show love by doing, gestures for your kids. You don't always have to make them do everything themselves, because part of that is just like showing love when you do certain things for them. But I want her to know how to do it. I don't want to always do everything for her to where now she doesn't even know how to do it. So from a very young age, I had her in Montessori school, preschool, first of all. So she learned a lot of stuff at school in that sense. But also at home, I sort of followed almost a Montessori style of home life and parenting, where it's like, you cut up your own fruit, you make your own drink, you do this, like you make your bed, you like, you know what I mean? Like, I think you'd be surprised how smart children are and how capable children are, literally from when they're like a toddler. There's so much that they can do if you let them do it and give them the space and, take time to teach them how to do things. And something like a little small example, I remember growing up, it was like a big deal when we would go out to eat. Not to put, I kind of feel a little bit bad because I don't mean to like put my little sister on blast, but for me and my little sister, mostly more so my little sister, when we would go out to eat, it was like a nerve-wracking thing. Like, our parents would have to order for us, or they would just do it. They'd say, what do you want to order? Oh, you want the quesadilla? And then the waiter would come and my parents would just say, oh, and she'll have the quesadilla. She wants a Sprite. Like, we would never order for ourselves. And I noticed after a while, like, we started to get older. Like, we're like 9, 10, 11, 12 years old. We should be able to speak up and speak to the waiter and order for ourselves, right? And like I said, more so with my little sister, it became a thing where like she was too shy. She was too nervous, like felt like she didn't know how to speak to the waiter, didn't know how to order, myself included. I sort of noticed it about myself and became self-conscious about it and made it a personal like goal of mine that I was like, I'm not gonna like, no, like I'm too old for this. Like next time we go out to eat, I'm ordering for myself. Like I'm gonna speak to the waiter. I'm not gonna let my parents like order for me. And I know that's like a really like random example, but just little things like that. So with Zaya, I have made it a point to make Zaya order for herself since she was old enough to speak, since she was old enough to pronounce the words on the menu. I make her talk to the waiter and say what she wants. I don't order for her. So it's like little things like that that are important to me because I think it may seem small, but it's for a bigger reason. You know what I mean? Being able to speak up and speak in public and advocate for yourself, those things are really, really important. And I try to find little ways to incorporate that throughout like daily life. Next question is there such a thing as having too many keepsake items? Where do you draw the line before you're just being a hoarder? Yes, I think there's definitely such a thing. And if y'all know, I'm currently on this journey of trying to declutter and organize my entire house. Because I just have let it get out of hand, especially recently, like over the past year or so. I have accumulated just so much stuff in general, but a lot of the stuff is quote unquote keepsake items. I have a lot of keepsake items. I host a lot of parties. I have a lot of special events. I make a lot of things by hand from scratch, custom things that I made that I spent time on that I want to keep. I get a lot of cool stuff in PR from brands, custom with my name on it. Like I have a lot of different areas of my life that create quote unquote keepsake items, and it builds up and it has gotten out of hand. But of course, another area is Zaya's stuff, anything relating to her, stuff that she's made. She's super artistic. So she has endless amounts of drawings and paintings and sculptures and stuff that she made at school and stuff that she just made by herself at home and stuff from when she was a baby and stuff like just, it never ends. And it is to the point now where it is so overwhelming that right now on this decluttering journey, I'm definitely being a lot more strict with getting rid of stuff. So I hate to say it, but a lot of the stuff that I had set aside to keep, it got thrown away. It did. It had to. I was like, it's getting out of hand. I think it's reasonable to have like one, like right now I have one like large, basically like one large plastic tote box sized, bin thingy of her baby stuff. I think that's reasonable. Like one bin of baby stuff. And then what I'm accumulating right now as far as like her elementary years, I guess it's going to be like what I'm trying to keep it to is like one bin worth of like elementary stuff. Like, I think that's like a reasonable way to look at it. Like one bin per phase of life, a baby bin, an elementary bin, a middle school bin, a high school bin. Cause I have a high school bin. It's in the attic. So I guess that's kind of the way I'm looking at it. It's hard to say though, because like it depends. I know some people, they might have a lot of trophies and medals. Like if your kids are in sports, we don't have that type of stuff. We mostly have like paper type stuff because Zaya likes to draw. But I definitely got rid of a lot of stuff. I think a good way to go about it is to remember that we have technology now. So you don't have to keep the physical item. You can take a picture of it, you can take a video of it, you can scan it in, and then you can get rid of the physical item so that it doesn't take up space. So I've been trying to remember to do that as well. Question number 9 is, did the white noise machine help with her sleep schedule and would I recommend it? Yes. 2 things that I think were a lifesaver ever since Zaya was a newborn when it comes to having her sleep well and sleep through the night: white noise machine and blackout curtains. Making sure the room is pitch black dark, whether it's nap times during the day, having to use blackout curtains, or at night, not using any nightlight. It needs to be pitch black dark in that room, and start that habit from a newborn so that they don't develop the habit of being quote unquote scared of the dark when they're older. Do not create a monster. You want to start them off when they're a newborn so they don't know any different, don't know any better. Pitch black in the room, turn that white noise machine on to a nice soft hum. They have different types of noise, white noise, brown noise, the different types of little staticky sounds. The exact sound I don't think matters as much, but for me, what I notice is if you've got that white noise machine going in their room, it drowns out any other random sound from around the house that might wake them up. So I don't feel like I have to tiptoe around the house as much because she can't really hear me behind the white noise. And having it be pitch black in the room means you might as well close your eyes and go to sleep because there's nothing else to look at. You know what I mean? Like you can, even if you have your eyes open, like what are you going to do? I feel like when there's like still light in the room or there's a night light, it gives them the opportunity to like be distracted. Like they're looking around, they're playing with stuff. If you have the little, how they have, what's that thing called that hangs over the cradle, the little hanging stars and moon that hang over the cradle. They're going to just be looking at that and looking around and playing and getting up if the lights are on. But if it's pitch black in there, you can't get up, you can't see, you can't do nothing but go to sleep. So that's what I always did. Now, I just recently saw an article that said that the white noise machine is bad because using it over time can cause like hearing damage, but I don't have it up super loud. So I feel like it's fine. That's what worked for me though. The white noise and pitch blackness. Those are my 2 biggest pieces of advice. Now, I'm not a doctor, so, at your own risk. Next question is, do I give my daughter whoopings? No, and no. I feel like that's not needed. I don't believe in that. I don't think I need to explain myself. No. Next question. Do I feel like my early 20s was robbed because I was a young mom and because I had Zaya when I was like 22 years old? I will say yes and no. Yes, because on one hand, while I was pregnant and while I, had this newborn baby in my early 20s, I definitely was looking around at my peers who did not have kids. Because at first I did not have any other young mom friends. I didn't meet a young mom friend until, 4 years later. So it was some years that I just felt very isolated. I felt very alone. I'm like, I'm the only young mom. None of my other friends have kids. They're out doing whatever they want to do, living their hot girl childless life. And I'm here, living a totally different life. But it wasn't that big of a deal because I'm naturally introverted. I'm naturally a homebody. I, of course, still like to go out and still like to have fun here and there when I feel like it. But I got a pretty good amount of time to do that before I got pregnant, like when I was in college, I still got to have a crazy 21st birthday. I still went out to the clubs and did certain things and went to parties before I got pregnant. So it's not like I didn't get to have any of that. I did miss out, I guess, on that first chunk of time between the ages of when I was like 22 to 26. But at the same time, like, I'm thinking back to I think that was my 25th birthday when I went to Miami and had a great time. Like, I've found ways to still make it work. And I mean, I'm 31 now, but like all throughout my 20s, I definitely found ways to still make it work, still travel, still party when I wanted to, still go to clubs, still do fun stuff with my friends, go to events and stuff like that. Maybe not as much as the next person who doesn't have a baby, but I don't think I would have been doing it as much as them anyway, because it's just not my personality. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I don't really look back on those years and say, dang, like I really missed out. I was stuck at home with a baby. Like I don't really feel that way towards it. I think I'm lucky in the sense that I've always had my parents help and support. So even though I didn't have a co-parent helping me, I could always call on my parents to get a break, to be able to go out, to travel, to do things here and there. Next question is, in what ways do I feel like my life would be different if I had a boy instead? This is an interesting question because I do feel like things would probably be super different, but I can't even imagine it. Like, I cannot imagine being a boy mom. I was meant to be a girl mom. I'm sorry. I don't know if that's problematic to say. I hate to tap into gender norms and gender, because there's no such thing as, I get it. I really try to have more of a neutral viewpoint when it comes to anything relating to gender. But just to put it plainly, I feel like I was made to be a girl mom. I told y'all how like I knew as soon as I found out I was pregnant, I just had this strong feeling that it was going to be a girl, and I wanted her to be a girl, if I'm being honest. And obviously she is a girl, and I think that was for the best. I don't know, like imagining myself as a boy mom, I just can't even, I don't know. I literally can't imagine it. That's really weird to think about. But at the same time, you never know what kind of boy I would have had. It really depends. It depends on the child. So I just really can't say. I will say I'm glad that Zaya is a girl. I know that that's, again, kind of technically problematic to say, but if I'm just being honest, I'm very glad that Zaya is a girl. Then somebody asked, what are my rules for technology? They said, I have a 6, almost 7-year-old. I'm so anxious for him to get access to the internet because it's literally the whole world at their fingertips. So I have pretty strict rules around technology. Currently, in this current moment, Zaya does not even have an iPad. She doesn't even have an iPad. She has had one before. Right now, she does not have one. We have TVs in the house. We have the main TV in the living room. She has her own TV in the playroom. She does not have a TV in her bedroom. And I'm pretty strict about screen time. I don't like the idea of just unlimited screen time, unlimited, like, I don't know what you're watching. Click it. Like, we have Netflix Kids and we have Disney Plus. That's it. Right now, we're not even doing YouTube at all. Not even YouTube Kids. There was a time where I was like, okay, you can do YouTube as long as it's YouTube Kids. But then I felt like, I don't know. I just don't like, there's too much stuff on YouTube, even YouTube Kids, that I don't like, and it's too hard to keep up with. I think a safer bet is Netflix Kids and Disney Plus. So Zaya is allowed to do those 2 apps on the TV with my supervision. And right now she doesn't have like any internet access because she doesn't even have an iPad. She doesn't have a laptop. She doesn't have a phone. She doesn't have any sort of way to just be accessing the internet. Now, At school, I know they're just starting to kind of use computers and stuff at school. And of course, that's very like regulated and whatever. And I don't have to worry about that. But yeah, right now, the access is extremely limited. And that is very much on purpose. I know that that's going to have to start to change because I do not want to keep her out the loop when it comes to using devices and having access to the internet. I think that's a very, very, of course, coming from me, I think that's a very important skill to have. The reason why she doesn't have an iPad right now is because she's working towards earning a brand new iPad. Her old one was just really old and it broke, but she's currently trying to earn a new iPad. And my mom has an iPad that Zaya has used before, and she's kind of gotten into different apps like digital drawing apps like Procreate, video editing apps, like she knows how to use CapCut and stuff like that. So we're basically just sort of like taking a break from it right now while she's earning her new iPad, but she does have an interest in some of these skills that I think are really good skills for her to have. And so I want her to be able to, grow those skill sets. And I want her to know how to use these devices and know how to navigate the internet. I'm saying all this to say we're about to dive into that pretty soon once she gets her new iPad. And that's, I know, going to be kind of just like, because it is a lot. It's a lot. But I think the main thing is to be very attentive, very diligent, and very specific. You cannot be lazy with it. I think that's the biggest problem. You want to be able to give your kids an iPad and send them off to go watch TV, and you don't want to have to keep such a close eye. You don't want to have to keep checking everything. But the only way to be safe with it is to keep checking and to be very attentive. You can't just send your kids off with some device to keep them busy. You have to be very attentive with it. And that's my plan. Then somebody asked, how do I feel about setting boundaries that are fair for the both of you, yet also align with personality type? Some boundaries stifle freedom to express themselves, speak their mind, or even chip away trust. And I'm nervous of doing that to my daughter. I get what they're saying. Like, just, you don't want to box your child in. You don't want to make them feel like they don't have any autonomy, that they're not their own person. They're not allowed to have their own opinions or their own choices. I do think that that's very important. This is something that I get criticism on a lot. Apparently, people think that I don't allow enough freedom with Zaya. They don't like the fact that I offer a lot of guidance, a lot of suggestions, and sometimes I just choose things for her. You know what I mean? There's the age old story of Zaya asking to paint her whole bedroom pink, from head to toe or whatever. And I was like, well, no, I think the design would look better if it's like this. And then I chose whatever. Or recently we were cleaning out her closet and I asked her, what arrangement do you want to hang your clothes in? And she suggested something and I suggested, well, no, because if you put your most frequently worn items up top where you can't even reach it, that's not going to be very functional. You should really put your everyday items down low where you can reach it. And somebody was like, you asked her how she wanted to do it, and then you just told her how she should do it anyway. Like, you're not letting her have any of her own opinions and freedom. And it's like, yeah, but there's a balance, because obviously I told her that for a reason. That was me trying to give her a helpful suggestion, a teaching moment when it comes to functionality and organization for her daily routine. I mean, what kind of mother would I be to just sit back and not say anything and not try to help her with that, and then let her struggle every day trying to reach her clothes that she can't reach because she didn't know better about how to organize it because she's only 8 years old. You know what I mean? She's only 8 years old. There are certain things that, like, I'm going to have to set boundaries. I'm going to have to guide her. I'm going to have to, I'm going to have to steer the boat. I'm the parent at the end of the day, and she doesn't know what's best. She's only 8. There are so many things that she's just not going to know any better. She's not going to know what's best. So at this age, I think it's like an age-based thing. You know what I mean? At this age, there's going to be a lot more course correction. There's going to be a lot more boundaries, a lot more rules, a lot more of me having to guide her, because how else is she going to know? She's brand new to this world still. But as she gets older and she is able to, she as her frontal lobe develops a little bit more and she's able to critically think for herself and make sound decisions for herself, then of course I will loosen the reins a little bit and let her have more autonomy in that way. But right now, yeah, there's definitely rules and boundaries that I set because it's like I'm not, again, it just doesn't make sense. She doesn't know. She's young. But I do really believe in self-expression and autonomy. And so I try to allow it where I can. I'm really big on letting her dress and present herself pretty much however she wants. I've kind of always let her do that from a super young age, like even when she was a toddler. Let her pick out her own clothes, even if it's mismatched, even if it look goofy, even if whatever, like that's what she wants to wear. It's not that big of a deal. It's really not hurting anything. Let her wear what she wants to wear. Let her choose her own hairstyles within reason. You know what I mean? Let her choose what she wants to eat, again, within reason. So a lot of these things are like, I can kind of give her a selection of reasonable or healthy or attainable choices and then let her choose from that, versus just like giving her full crazy freedom. I think that's sort of a way around it too. And then also when it comes to the freedom to express herself as far as like speaking her mind, I'm really big on speaking to Zaya as if she's a grown up, basically, in the sense that like I'm not babying her. I'm trying to have real conversations with her. I talk to her just like I'm talking right now. I talk to her in this tone of voice. I use words that she may not know, but it's a great way for her to learn the meaning of those words. I have real face-to-face conversations with her like this, and I allow her to ask questions. I allow her to speak back and have it be a back and forth thing. I hate the idea of because I said so, because I'm your mom. Well, I'm not going to answer that question because I don't really have an answer because, you know what I mean? I hate that. I think that that is so counterproductive when parents do that and like shut their kids down and don't allow for it to be a real conversation. I think asking questions is super important. And so I really just try to always leave the communication really open in that way. The next question is, what do I teach Zaya about confrontation? Am I the hit them back if they hit you type of mom, or am I the tell the teacher type of mom? I am 100% tell the teacher type of mom because I am just that type of person. I am somebody who is going to snitch. I am a snitch and proud of it. I will tell the teacher. I will call the cops. I will call my mama. I will call my daddy. Like, I'm going to tell. Okay. I think that obviously has like a bad connotation. You get a bad rap if you're a snitch, if you tell a teacher, whatever. But no, I'm not going to tell my daughter, hit them back. Now, self-defense, protecting yourself is one thing. And I think that's important to teach that in the sense that like, if you're being attacked, don't just sit there and take it. Like, know how to have some level of self-defense in the moment. But all in all, your best bet is going to be to tell an adult. Tell a trusted adult, get an adult involved. If you're dealing with anything at school, tell the teacher. Like I always tell her that because I think that's just the right way to go. Trying to, like, as a child, trying to handle things yourself, like amongst the kids privately, like that's just never going to go well. You need to get an adult involved. And it's important for kids to learn what a trusted adult is, because not all adults can be trusted. You know what I mean? And so I've talked to her a lot about that. Making her feel safe to come and tell me certain things and not feel like she's a tattletale just because she's telling me. Like, I think tattletale culture is bad. You want your kids to feel safe to tell the truth to trusted adults. I think that's really important, and not teaching your kids to just fight back and that's it. This next question is a little bit long. I'm just going to read through it. My question might be a little bit loaded, but it's heavy on my heart. I haven't had children yet, but I'm 28, married, and I plan to start that journey sooner rather than later. My mom had me when she was 19, and the struggles I watched her endure and overcome have definitely had an effect on my perception of motherhood and all that it entails. All that to say, what advice would you give preparing yourself for motherhood, and how do you go about having grace for yourself in those moments where it seems like they're picking up a bad habit of yours that you didn't expect or want for them? I feel like I need to get right to be the best possible example for them, because I'd hate for them to turn into me and watch them struggle with some of the same things I struggle with, and it's all my fault. Do you or have you had any anxieties surrounding motherhood, and how have you overcome them, or what steps have you taken in the process of overcoming them? She said it herself. That's definitely a loaded question. Basically, to break it down into sections, what advice would I give myself preparing for motherhood? Biggest piece of advice for mothers, period. This is my biggest thing that I've learned. And this is a hard pill to swallow. If you are going to have a baby, you need to accept the fact that that is going to be your baby, first and foremost. As the mother, basically, you come first in line when it comes to taking care of that baby. You're going to carry the baby, you're going to birth the baby, and you are going to be first in line to take care of that baby. I don't care what your situation is. I don't care if you have been happily married with zero issues for 10 years. I don't care if you think you are with the best man in the world. I don't care if you're in a lesbian relationship and you're with the best woman in the world. I don't care how good you think you have it, or how much you think you've prepared, or how much you think you've waited long enough and prepared. You do not know what could happen tomorrow. You don't know. Life comes at you fast. Crazy things happen. Bad things happen to good people. You need to be prepared to possibly raise that child yourself. At the very least, you need to be prepared to be the main caregiver, the person who does majority of the work. You need to understand that this is your baby. I don't know any other way to say that. This is your baby, first and foremost. As the one who is carrying the baby, this is your baby. Do not bank on being able to rely on a single other person in this world, including the other parent. Do not bank on that. I want you to imagine yourself in a situation where you have to raise this child by yourself. Do you still want the child? Do you think you can still do it? I think that's the question that every mother should ask themselves when it comes to preparing to become a mother. Could you still be a mother if you had to do it alone? If something happens to where you end up having to do it alone, do you still think that this is a good idea for you? Obviously, that's not really ideal for anyone. But again, you just never know. You cannot place yourself above that possibility. You never know. It happens so often for so many different reasons. And becoming a mother is such a huge life-altering decision. And I think that's just how you have to think about it. You know what I mean? So that was the main thing that I thought about when it came to preparing myself to become a mother, because I already knew for a fact that I was more or less going to be doing it alone. And so I really had to ask myself, like, do I want this? Do I by myself, not thinking about what anybody else wants, not thinking about anybody else's input, but do I, me and only me, do I want this? Am I going to be okay with this? Do I really think that I can do this? And my answer was yes. So obviously I went through with it, but I think every mom should ask themselves that. And as far as the whole thing about your child possibly picking up bad habits or bad behaviors or bad traits of yours, yeah, I mean, that's a possibility. Certain things are passed down through DNA and you can't control that, whether it be some sort of physical thing, some sort of mental thing, a habit, a behavior that they end up just picking up from seeing you do it in real life. That's definitely a possibility. And for the most part, there's nothing you can really do about that, because if it's something like physical or mental, you literally can't control that. They're going to get what they get from your DNA. You have to be prepared for that. You have to also, that should be part of the questions that you ask yourself. If you know you have something, are you okay with the risk of your child also having that same thing, whatever it may be? As far as like habits that they may pick up on, that's up to you to, like you said, get yourself together. You better break those bad habits before you bring that child into the world, before they're old enough to pick up on it. Because yeah, that could definitely happen. That is, I think, part of your responsibility as a mother, to work on your own bad habits first before you end up passing it down to your child. I do think you should think about that. But all in all, you're just never going to be the perfect mom. You're never going to be able to avoid all these things. You're going to have struggles, you're going to have anxieties, and your kids are going to have struggles as well. That is just how it is. Like all the preparing and all the thinking and all the make sure I get right and make sure I break all my bad habits and make sure, you could do all the makings sure in the world, and you will still not be able to avoid certain things. You're still going to have struggles. This is something I talk to my mom about all the time. Is like, you try so hard. You want to do all the things. You try so hard, and something is going to come out of left field that you just couldn't have prepared for. And it's still like, you know what I mean? So really what you said about like giving yourself grace, I think is the most important thing. You're not going to be perfect. Things are going to go wrong. There are going to be struggles. There are going to be hardships, and you're going to see your kids struggle as well. As hurtful as that is to see, it's unavoidable. You know what I mean? And you really have to give yourself grace and just accept the fact that you're not going to be perfect. Nobody else is perfect either. I don't know. It's like I don't really have an answer. It's like it just is what it is. It sucks, but it is what it is. And the best thing you can do is just try to give yourself grace and just say, you know what, this is normal. This is part of it. And, try to move on. Okay, sorry guys, if you're watching the YouTube version, I clearly have had an outfit change. I had a technical difficulty, so I had to come back later and finish recording this episode, but I still technically have my pink on my hoodie, and we're just gonna keep pushing. Okay, moving on to the next question that I got, which was, what challenges do I face being a single mother and not having the dad role around? Here's the thing with this question. I feel like it's one of those things where you don't know what you don't know. You can't miss what you never had. I don't know what it's like to raise a child with a father figure involved. I never did that. It's something that I've never experienced. Obviously, I experienced what it's like to have my own father in my own life, but I think that's different than raising your own child with the help of the father. You know what I mean? Like, it's just two different things. And because I've never experienced it, I don't really know what I'm missing. Of course, I can look at other families or look at, my friends. I have a close friend who is married and she's raising a child who's Zaya's age, but she's raising a little boy. And so I feel like that's different. But I don't know. I guess what I'm getting at is, for me, it doesn't really feel like anything because there's nothing to compare it to. So I don't necessarily feel like I struggle with it. It doesn't seem like a huge deal. The whole concept of, everybody needs a dad. Everybody needs a father figure. There are certain things that only your dad can teach you. There are certain things that every kid needs from, their dad specifically. And a mother will never be able to fully fill that void. I don't know if I agree with that. And also maybe it's because Zaya is a girl. Maybe it's because I have a daughter. Maybe it would be different if I had a son. People seem to make a really big deal about sons needing their dad or needing a father figure, which I understand from a certain perspective. But on another note, I do try not to have such antiquated views when it comes to gender in general. And I feel like this is not the episode to get so deep into the conversation about gender. But I think if I had to list a challenge that I faced because I don't have the dad role in the home, is literally just more so logistical challenges of just not having a second parent helping me on a daily basis. I have my parents' help, which I've mentioned before. Like, if I need to call on them, I can call on them, and they're very involved, and I'm very lucky to have them. But I don't have an actual second parent. It's not a 2-parent household. It's a 1-parent household. As much as my parents help me, that's not a 24/7 thing, obviously. So any challenge that I face would more so be, I wish I had a second set of hands, but it wouldn't specifically have to be a father's hands. You know what I mean? It could be a nanny. It could be another woman. It could be whoever. It's just having another adult in the house, period, could be helpful sometimes, just to literally give me a break or help me out. But it's nothing specific to the whole thing about a father figure. So I just can't really, I don't know, I can't really speak to that too much. Kind of in that same vein, the next question that I got, which is definitely a hot question, frequently asked question that I honestly don't think I've ever touched on, is how did I handle the whole dad conversation with Zaya? What have I told Zaya? How did I explain it to her? That whole thing. I think the last time that this got brought up, I believe it was in a podcast episode a couple years ago at this point. I think what I told you guys is that I didn't want to say anything on the internet that I haven't said to Zaya. Like, I don't want to explain something to my followers that I haven't even explained to Zaya yet. You know, like, why do y'all deserve the story or the information or the breakdown before my own daughter even gets it? And so that's a big reason why I haven't shared certain details online, but we have had an update. Keep in mind, Zaya is only 8 years old. So when it comes to this difficult conversation surrounding her dad, there's only so much that I can tell her that's age appropriate that she will even be able to remotely understand or comprehend, right? Like, I have to keep it age appropriate, and I don't want to overwhelm or confuse her. At the same time, if she has questions, I want to be able to answer her questions the best that I can. So up until just recently, it honestly hasn't really been a big issue. She hasn't really been asking me about it. She doesn't seem too worried about it. All I've really had to tell her is families come in all shapes and sizes. Some people have a mommy and a daddy. Some people have two daddies. Some people have two mommies. Some people are raised by their grandparents. Some people are just raised by their dad. Some people are just raised by their mom. You can look around you and see proof of that within our personal life, within the families at school. This is very normal. I want you to know that this is very normal. I want you to be respectful of other people's families that may look different than yours. And I want you to know that your family is normal. Don't ever make anybody feel like you're weird or there's something wrong with you because of the dynamic of your family. So I've always instilled that in her from a very, very young age. And she seems to, like, she instantly understood that and accepted that, and that didn't really seem to be a problem. But when she was, I want to say it was about a year and a half, 2 years ago. So maybe she's around 6 years old. She did randomly come up to me and ask me, I forgot how exactly she worded it, because like, she's 6. So it's like, put yourself in the position of a 6-year-old. It's hard to know what exactly goes through their head, but she basically ended up asking me, what is my dad's name? And where does he live? Like, it was just random. I'm not sure what prompted her to ask that, but I was like, oh, okay. And I told her his name is, and he lives in, and she just was like, oh, okay. No further questions. That's all she wanted to know. Not sure why. I think I asked her why, and she was like, I just wanted to know because I didn't know. Or I couldn't remember, I think is what she said. I couldn't remember. And so she was just, asking me, and I just was like, okay. And I kind of, again, I'm letting her lead the conversation. I'm letting her ask whatever questions she has. I'm not about to just lay a whole bunch of extra information on her that she didn't ask for. So she only asked name and location. I gave her name and location, and she was fine with that. And she just went on her merry way. Literally, she just went off and played happily. So I was like, okay. I was expecting her to have more follow-up questions, but she didn't. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna leave it at that. It wasn't until just recently that she did actually have some follow-up questions. And it was because someone at school asked her about her dad or about her family dynamic. And I think through them asking her, it made her realize that she didn't really know the answer fully. And she didn't really know how to answer them. So she came home to me and said, hey, so-and-so asked me this, but I didn't really know. And they told me to ask you. So now I'm asking you. The person at school had told her to ask me, quote, you should ask your mom more about your birth story. Which was, I was like, okay, like, that's such a loaded question. Thank you for telling her to ask me that. I mean, fair, I get it, but like, Okay. So she came home and she's like, yeah, they told me to ask you about my birth story. So I'm like, so now I'm trying to think through. And of course, this is something I've been thinking about. This is something I've been trying to prepare for a long time. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, I knew this day would come. And I'm trying to handle it as carefully as possible, but it's hard. You know what I mean? It's hard to know exactly what to say when. But it's important to me that I answer her questions. You know what I mean? So I ended up telling her a very simplified answer. Background context: her and I have been having a lot of conversations about respect. Respect yourself, respect others, respect your things, respect the household, be respectful at school. We've been having a lot of conversations about self-control. Sometimes you really want to do something, but it's not the right thing to do, and you have to have self-control. You are in charge of your own body, and you have to control yourself and do the right thing. And just sort of like those conversations revolving around like appropriate behavior and stuff like that. We were just having a conversation about that recently. So I sort of used that as a segue in this conversation. And I explained to her, I was like, you know, all those conversations we've been having about respect, self-control, doing the right thing, making good decisions. I said, adults struggle with that too. You know, adults also struggle with that. Some adults still, when they're good and grown, have trouble being respectful, controlling themselves, and doing the right thing and making safe decisions. And I explained to her that her dad struggled with that. And because of that, I had to make the decision that not only did I not want to be around him, but that I could not have you around him either. And it's very unfortunate. And I explained to her, you know, it's okay to be sad about it. I understand you may have more questions, but I literally told her, I was like, I'm telling you, I said, the answer that I'm giving you right now is what I feel is an age appropriate answer. I don't feel like this is the right time for me to tell you certain other details about it. I understand you may have more questions, and we can talk about it later when you get older. And she understood, and she was like, she didn't really seem to be bothered by that aspect of it. She took it very well. There was no big emotional response, nothing crazy like that. It was a very quick, simple thing where I basically just said, some adults struggle to make good decisions. Your dad did not make good decisions. And so we had to separate ourselves from that. And that was pretty much it. And I, you know, like I said, I comforted her and tried to validate any feelings that might have come up, but she didn't really seem to have a lot of feelings come up, at least not right then in that moment, you know? And she just was like, oh, okay. And I also explained to her that this is a personal, private subject. Ironic that I'm here on a podcast talking about it to the whole internet. But in the sense that if she doesn't want, because this whole thing stemmed from somebody at school asking her about it, which was a very innocent thing. You got to put yourself in these other people's shoes. They have no idea. This was not something that stemmed from, oh, they saw my videos and blah, blah, blah. It was literally just a simple fact that the person she was talking to does not know us, does not know her, has no idea about our family dynamic, and sort of accidentally fell into the trap of, you don't have a father figure and you don't know much about your dad. And oops, I just asked about your dad, assuming that everyone has a dad, realized you don't have a dad, and tried to sort of, you know, get around the topic by saying, oh, well, maybe you should ask your mom about it. Huh? You know, it was just one of those awkward things where they just didn't know. And I've talked about before how I feel like we as a people, we as a society have to be more careful. We have to stop making assumptions. We have to be more careful, especially when dealing with young 8-year-old kids. You don't know what the family dynamic is. So maybe don't talk about it. Maybe don't ask them about it. You know what I mean? You don't know what you could be stirring up. It's very similar to when grown adults are asking women about, when are you going to have another baby? Are you pregnant? Blah, blah, blah. You don't know what could be going on with their fertility issues or whatever. Like, there are just some topics that are just not worth bringing up or asking about. Some topics are just like, to me, not appropriate for small talk if you don't know the person well enough. And so it was just one of those things where it sort of just got accidentally, awkwardly brought up. And so I was explaining to Zaya, going forward, you don't have to explain anything to anyone if you don't want to. And I'm keeping in mind the reality of what I do for a living, the reality of what I'm doing right now in this moment, talking about this to the internet. I want Zaya to know that she doesn't have to explain anything to anyone. If someone asks her about anything personal, but specifically about this whole situation with her family dynamic and her dad, she can just say, that's private, that's personal, I don't want to talk about it. I told her that. That's what I told her. I was like, you are going to probably continue to be asked about this, and you don't have to talk about it if you don't want to. It is nobody's business, really. It is nobody's business unless you want it to be their business. And I was explaining sort of like the concept of private personal information, and if something makes you feel uncomfortable, how to deal with that and how to navigate that. And if somebody's bothering you about it or teasing you about it, or if it gets to the point of bullying, what do you do? Like I said earlier, you tell the teacher. You know what I mean? Do not be afraid to get a trusted adult involved. Yeah, I think I'm in a place now where the reason why I'm able to talk about it in this episode is because I had that conversation with her, and I feel like I'm in a good place with her. Obviously I'm going to make sure of that first. And yeah, I think it's one of those things, like, it's going to I knew this day would come. It's going to have to come out to a certain extent in our personal lives, at school, and also on the internet to a certain extent. Like, it's a known thing. Like, I'm not going to be able to avoid, Zaya is not going to be able to avoid the fact that her dad is not in our lives. Like, you can try to keep it hush hush, keep it as an elephant in the room as much as you want. And I've done that for majority of the time. But at a certain point, it's like, okay, you know what I mean? Someone's going to ask about it. It's going to come up. Like, to a certain extent, we're entering that phase where she's getting older, and it's going to be more of just like a known thing. And it is what it is. You know what I mean? We're just navigating it day by day. And yeah, those are pretty much all the questions that you guys had for me this go around. But of course, this is just such a huge ongoing topic. I want to keep the conversation going. I want to keep this door open. I want to do more follow-up episodes, similar episodes where you guys can ask me specific questions. So if you have anything else to ask, definitely leave your comments in the comment section of the YouTube video, or hit me up on the Raven Elyse podcast Instagram account. Make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel and following the Instagram account, because that is where you will get all the updates and all the prompts for future episodes for different topics as well. And that's it. I will talk to you guys next Wednesday. Bye.